This is a bit of an unusual situation for me because usually the company is presented by the CEO, Jonas Ekblom, but unfortunately he couldn't be here today, so I will do it instead, and I hope I can do it well, and I hope my voice will carry through the whole presentation. So what is Promore Pharma? We are, as you can understand, a pharma company. We are listed on Nasdaq First North since July 2017. We have not one, but two late-stage projects, and we are working with human peptides, which have an extraordinary safety profile. Our most advanced project is PXL01. We are preparing it for phase 3, where we are trying to prevent adhesions after tendon repair surgery. There are no prescription drugs for this indication, and we believe there are 1 million patients in the traditional pharmaceutical markets. We believe that the addressable EU market is about $300 million, and we see great opportunities for indication broadening for this peptide. The other project, LF37, is focusing on treating chronic wounds, mainly venous leg ulcers. There are no prescription drugs for venous leg ulcers either. And we believe there are 6 million patients or more in Europe, North America, and Japan, and that the addressable global market is $3 billion. Also here we can see indication broadening opportunities. We like to show this snapshot. We are part of the super area, which can be called wounds, trauma, and amputation, and it actually accounts for 1/3, the third largest spending area within healthcare. Larger actually than oncology, which I think surprised many. Of the clinical studies being performed, only 10% goes into our super area, so it's not a high competition for R&D in this area. We are working with peptides. So what are peptides? Well, it takes advantages for both the sort of traditional drug classes. We have the traditional small molecules, the one you take orally, like paracetamol or beta blockers. And we have the newer types of pharmaceuticals, the biological ones, the monoclonal antibodies and the therapeutic proteins. Peptides actually are proteins, but short or very short ones. And this makes it possible to manufacture them in an easier way than compared to the biological pharmaceuticals. They have very high startup costs, and this is not the case for the peptides. So in this sense, we are more similar to the small molecules. The small molecules, however, since they are so easy to produce, they also face tough generic competition once the patents expire. This has not been the case for the peptides that are on the market. The generic erosion has been 15 to 20% compared to up to 95% for the small molecules. So we think it's a good place to be in. The challenges why there are not that many peptides out there yet have been that local delivery is necessary. And that was a bit of a problem before the biological pharmaceutical gained success, because patient compliance was not that good before that. But thinking about it, local delivery is the way to go with peptides, because that's how you mimic the situation in the body, because peptides are released in the tissue or close to the tissue where it's supposed to have its action. We can also control duration and dosing by choosing formulation and injection volume. But perhaps the most important take-home message from this slide is the safety profile. Since we give it locally, nothing leaks into the bloodstream. And if it leaks into the bloodstream, peptides are degraded very rapidly in the blood system and can therefore not be transported to any major organs and have severe adverse events. So we have something that we think is a very safe project. Looking at the first project, then, PXL01, which is focusing on preventing adhesions and scars. Adhesions form after any type of surgery, and there are a significant cause of post-surgical complications. They can cause pain, they can cause infertility, immobility, and can prolong any subsequent surgery or require second surgery. So it constitutes a considerable burden on the healthcare system. We are working with PXL01, which is a naturally occurring peptide. You find it in breast milk. It has unique anti-inflammatory actions and pro-fibrinolytic properties, And these two factors are very important when it comes to scar formation or adhesion formation. Our first indication is prevention of adhesions after tendon repair surgery. We are focusing on hand surgery, but we know that we will also have label extension to tendons in the arm and foot. We also look at other indications, but I will come back to that. Tendon injuries, the medical need then. About 0.1% of the general population suffer from tendon injuries in a year, and about 1/3 comes from the hand. Up to 50% of patients undergoing surgical repair of a tendon will never recover full mobility and finger strength after surgery. And today there are no pharmaceutical products to address this problem. Also, very often when you injure the tendon, you will also injure the nerve, and that will probably cause pain or sensory loss. This is not a huge indication, so why have we chosen this? Well, we're a small company and we think we can be very successful with this indication. There are several reasons for that. We are focusing on an area with very high incidence of scar formation, the hand surgery problem. The methods of clinically assess the outcome, they are validated, quantitative and standardized. So there are protocols and ways to measure how the mobility is after surgery. The patients are mainly young and healthy. The typical patient is a man aged 25 to 40. You can guess why they are more common than women. The good thing about this is that they don't have any comorbidities. They are healthy and we don't have to take into account that they could have other diseases. Also important is that surgery is done in a limited number of specialized hospitals. The surgeons are few. It's therefore easier to identify suitable hospitals to go into clinical trials. And also in the next step, when it comes to marketing, it's easy to find the surgeons that will be the buyers of this product. We have a picture of Bono. He injured his hand in a bicycle accident in 2015, and apparently he can't play guitar anymore. I'm not sure if he could before, but that's what I hear. The product concept. We mix PXL01, the peptide, with hyaluronic acid. We put it into a syringe without a needle. And then we deliver it once in connection with the surgery. So when the surgeon has repaired the tendon, the solution is put on top of the tendon, and then the tendon sheath and the wound is closed. So we have the drug where it's supposed to work. And it's also, as I said before, very safe. And we have not been able to detect any PXL01 in the bloodstream after surgery and using the product. We have done a phase 2 trial with PXL01. This is some of the outcomes from that trial. The most important, of course, is the mobility in the injured finger, and that was measured in the most distal finger joint, so that's the top one. That one is always affected if you injure the tendon anywhere in the hand. We improved mobility by 19 degrees. And you can ask yourself if this is relevant, and yes, it is. Key opinion leaders say that 10 degrees is where you start having problems with small objects like closing buttons or eating with chopsticks or similar things. We also looked at nerve function. We didn't expect to see any significant outcome, but we actually reduced or improved nerve function recovery quite significantly. Important for pricing when it comes to a product on the market is the last one. Many patients have so severe problems that they are recommended a resurgery called tenolysis. This is a more complicated and more expensive surgery than the initial surgery. It's actually surgeon cuts open the wound and then removes all the adhesions with a scalpel. And the risk of getting new adhesions is actually as big as in the first surgery. Since it is expensive, it is very easy to count how much you can charge if you give this to all patients and actually save money anyway. This one is not statistically significant in this trial, but it wasn't dimensioned for this, so we expect to see this in the phase 3 trial. The phase 3 trial is one we are preparing for now. We will include more than 600 patients, so that 420 will complete the protocol. We have 3 different groups, 2 given PXL01 and 1 given placebo. It will be done in Sweden, Germany, Poland, Italy, and India. And we actually got approval already from India, but now we are finalizing the manufacturing supply chain for Europe before we can apply for clinical trial approval. We like to show this. We sometimes get the question how we, as such a small company, can perform or conduct a phase 3 trial. And the thing is, because we have such a safe product, we don't have to consider this, any safety issues when it comes to doing the phase 3 trial. So we can go with a lower number of patients in a phase 3 trial than the nominal value. That reduces cost heavily. We have an expensive product, but it's only given once, and we don't have any expensive assessments or tests that are done in the phase 3 trial. So it's a low-cost phase 3 trial. And we think it's interesting to compare it to the success rate. You can find us in the musculoskeletal indication area, and that usually shows a success rate of 70%. So when you look at the cost and risk ratio, we have a very, very strong profile. I said there are opportunities to expand PXL, and the first indication that we are in is obviously then the tendon and nerve injury repair, with 1 million procedures globally every year. We have out-licensed PXL01 for use in spinal surgery, especially in connection with degenerative disc disease. That's diskbråck in Swedish. So they are paying for all the development, and we have a double-digit royalty for any sold products, and also the same share for any milestone payments they would receive. Perhaps the most interesting one is, of course, the dermal scarring. Scars you get on the skin. There are obviously many, many procedures that are relevant globally every year, looking at plastic surgery, cesarean sections, burn wounds. And to examine this a little bit, we are planning for a feasibility study that's going to be conducted next year. Moving on to the other project, LL37, that is aiming to treat chronic wounds. There are more than 50 million patients with chronic wounds in the major pharmaceutical markets. The dominating ones are venous leg ulcers and diabetic foot ulcers. There are very few prescription products, and they are all aiming for diabetic foot ulcers, and they all have very limited medical value. Also, the R&D competition is very low. And that is a bit surprising, since the cost for treating one chronic wound exceeds $10,000 per patient or episode. So a lot of money goes into treating these patients. We are working with LL37, which is a naturally occurring peptide, which is involved in wound biology. If you cut yourself and have an acute wound, the levels of LL37 will rise instantly. But in the chronic wounds, there is no LL37. So we think of LL37 as some sort of replacement therapy. So we change the chronic wound into acute wound, and the body starts healing itself. Our first indication is venous leg ulcers. It's the largest patient population in the major pharmaceutical markets. Looking at it globally, diabetic foot ulcers are more common, but the major markets, VLUs, are more common. There are no pharmaceuticals for this indication. And looking at it from a development perspective, we think it's better to go for this one. The ulcers are found between the knee and the foot, not so deep. So if you compare that to diabetic foot ulcers, they are usually found under the foot. So from a compliance issue and treatment issue, it's more difficult to look at diabetic foot ulcers. But perhaps more importantly, it's also very difficult to find diabetic patients, because they are all involved in many clinical trials. but we think we can use LA37 for diabetic foot ulcers as well. LA37 is mixed into a gel and will be given in connection with regular wound dressing change 2 to 3 times a week. So it doesn't require any change of medical practice. And it can be applied by a patient or a nurse. We have done a small phase 2 trial looking at safety mainly. We had extraordinary results where 2 of the doses were showing significant good results. We often get the question, why isn't the highest dose effective? And it's because it's counterproductive. LA37 is pro-inflammatory, so it causes more damage than good. We're right now in a phase 2b trial in Sweden and Poland. We are recruiting 120 patients that will complete protocol. We have a 3-week run-in on placebo to exclude any patients that are just undertreated and not having proper chronic wounds. They will be treated for 3 months, and then we have 4 months follow-up. Very short about corporate. We had an exciting 2018 with many important events, many of them in connection with PXL01, where we regained our manufacturing rights for the commercial product. We out-licensed the spinal surgery indication to PRP. We met with the FDA, and we also had the Indian approval for the phase 3 trial. But perhaps most importantly, we had our first patient in the HEAL LA37 trial. In 2019, we are working very hard to finalize PXL01, the manufacturing supply chain, and we will announce when we reach around 50% of the patients in the HEAL LA37. We will also look at the financing event. We had listed warrants that matured in February and that they didn't bring any money, so we have an authorization now to go to look for further capital. We have very different setups when it comes to business strategy for the different projects. PXL01, we intend to take all the way to market, and the timeline is set to 2022. We can then commercialize on our own, or we can find a partner. Perhaps the latter is more likely, but we have the opportunity to go to market ourselves. LA37, on the other hand, is a general practitioner's product. We cannot take that product to market, so we will look to out-license that project when we have the results from the phase 2 trial. I will skip the financial snapshot because it's not that interesting. You can look at it afterwards yourself. Our shareholder structure is unfortunately very concentrated, so the 3 main owners have a large share of the available stock. Something we hope to be able to change over time so we have better liquidity in the stock. We also have almost 2 million warrants that are held by 3 partners in the PXL01 program. Management team, 4 people, and that is actually more or less the whole company. We have an office manager as well, and perhaps that is not the full truth because we also have, of course, a lot of consultants in the R&D area, some working a couple of hours a month and some up to half-time. The board of directors, we have a long-term pharma member in Göran Pettersson, who is the chairman. We have 3 representatives for the main owners, and then we have 2 independent. Marianne Dikander Alexandersson, who was elected in 2017, and then Kerstin Wallinder Strinholm, who was elected now a couple of weeks ago, so we don't have a picture of her. They both have good experience from the pharmaceutical markets, especially when it comes to business development. So to finalize, we have 2 late-stage clinical programs. We are addressing indications where there are no pharmaceutical products, so there is unmet medical need. We have a validated technology with strong IP protection. I didn't mention that before, but it goes well beyond into 2030. And then when patents expire, we believe that we have a strong position anyway. We don't expect tough generic competition. We have a very strong safety profile that gives low development costs, and we don't think we will fail due to safety in late-stage trials. We have high growth potential. We are in a market segment that is showing high growth, 8 to 9% annually compared to the general wound care market, which is growing at 2 to 3%. And we have the opportunities to go into other indications. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenni. I'll just start up. We saw a timeline here from Pixel, but just to touch upon the manufacturing logistics,
Yes.
where are you currently in that sense, and what do you need to do from here on until the phase 3?
Yeah, we have announced that we have some manufacturing problems because one of our suppliers that used to have a GMP certificate could not renew it when they had an inspection. So now we're working with that particular supplier to get them to the point where they get a GMP certificate, but we also change the whole chain, moving things around a little bit so we have more suppliers, so we have better risk management when it comes to the future. So we need to solve a few more things before we can finalize the whole time plan.
Exactly.
But we hope to be very soon.
Yeah, so we're still talking 2019.
Yes.
Yeah. And do you have, just regarding the LL37, do you have a dialogue already now with potential partners in terms of a positive outcome from that, or how?
Some, but it's difficult to have a discussion before you actually have the results. So yes, Jonas is on his way to Bio in San Francisco, so I hope he will talk to some companies about it, but there will be nothing until we have the results.
Okay, so some brief discussions at least.
Yes.
Yeah. And just finally, you showed us a financial snapshot very shortly.
Yeah, very short. I thought I was running out of time,
exactly,
so I skipped it.
And you discussed it a bit as well, but your current financial position, I mean, putting it into perspective, given where you are in these late stages, what type of further fundings would you need to finalize this, you think?
It really depends on how much we can partner out. I mean, should we do everything ourselves, we need quite a lot. We will take whatever we can right now, I would say,
yeah.
so that we can start the phase 3 trial as soon as we're ready.
Course, yeah.
The LL37 is close to finishing, so I mean, we have recruited not 50% of the patients yet, but lot of the costs are already taken.
Okay, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
coming.